Congress shall pass no law abridging the right of the people to peaceably assemble. Good to see you here. You are a fired-up crowd, are you not? I'm glad there are no Somali pirates on stage. Now, we have a few prepared remarks to give. We've been asked to keep it at 5 minutes or so, and we will keep it at 5 to 10 minutes. Certainly no more than 15. But you got to help me with something I'm a little confused about. On the way over here today, I heard certain commentators and certain leaders of certain houses of certain representatives say that these gatherings nationwide were A, the rich, B, the fat cats, and C, the running dogs of some think tank I've never heard of in my life. Now, looking out at the crowds, you don't look like fat cats to me. Some of you look like maybe you've been working your whole lives. Maybe you spent a hell of a long time without 2 dimes to rub together. And you kept working, and sometimes you screwed up. And you got punched in the mouth, and you didn't even think to say to the government, can you bail me out, please? You kept working. You acted like an American. And you know, it's amazing to me how willing we are these days to abandon the most basic principles of what we are. And if you're a fan of those basic principles, you sound like some sort of radical, as they're calling you fat cats, rich people, and running dogs and think tanks. You're a bunch of radicals. The idea of hewing to the Constitution closely is radical. The idea of punishing good behavior and rewarding bad behavior is popular. I am one confused boy. Speaking of good behavior and bad behavior, Jack, I know you have a bit of a tale to tell.
I have been talking to my dad about the financial situation for the last 6 months or so, and I don't know if you remember, that's the way it used to work. You'd find out from your mom and dad how to handle your money, and the government wouldn't explain to you how to handle your money. So I've been talking to my dad about it, and this is the way my parents have lived my entire life, their entire lives. Never made a lot of money, worked a regular job, never owned a new car, never went on lavish vacations, almost never ate out, saved their money their entire lives, were able to retire. And they're doing fine. And my dad said to me a couple of weeks ago, he said, you know, there's one thing I never planned on, though. I did all this planning, but I never planned on the fact that someday the government would decide to come take the money from the people who saved it and give it to the people who didn't. He said, in a very sad voice, I never planned on this. You know, none of us planned on this. None of us planned on the idea of if your neighbor bought a house that he can't afford, and you bought a house you can't afford, you have to make part of his mortgage. Who planned on that? So here's my question for you. And I just want to know how many of you people agree with me, because this is the way I would like to live. I'm willing to sign this contract. I want to know if you're willing to make this deal also. You're willing to accept the responsibility of your decisions. For instance, you max out all your credit cards, you lose your job, and now you're screwed, but it's your fault and you'll deal with it. Are you willing to take that? Are you willing to make that agreement?
Where do I sign?
That if you screw up, you buy a house you can't afford, times go bad, I guess I made a mistake. Are you willing to take that risk for the upside of you get to keep more of your tax money and you don't have to pay for other people's mistakes? I'm willing to take that risk. I'm willing to sign up for that deal.
Now, I read with interest in the USA Today this morning that a majority, a tiny little majority, but a majority of the American people say they're uncomfortable with government getting any bigger. They're comfortable with huge government spending, but not big government. I'm confused again. Of course, I'm easily confused, but that tells me we have a job to do in our neighborhoods, in our places of work, amongst our friends, lovers, and fellow countrymen. And that's to tell them, honestly and sincerely, what we believe, without shame, without being made to feel like a radical, The great thinker and writer Thomas Sowell said, much of the social history of the Western world, especially over the last 3 decades, has been a history of replacing what works with what sounds good. Abandon the principles of America at your peril. Small government is not one of several competing ideologies. It's what the entire Constitution was written to make.
Now, we're going to be walking around the rest of the afternoon and grabbing some of you fine citizens and bringing you up here and letting you say your piece. And by looking at the signs, plenty of you got plenty to say.
I love the signs. And one more quote, if I may, from one more great conservative. Although Barry Goldwater was very, quote, liberal in a lot of ways, but he was a small government guy and a freedom guy. First of all, if I may say for myself, if you are dependent, you can't be independent. You cannot be enslaved and free. Now, I'm a student of the language. I realize that's a pretty advanced thought. If you're dependent, you can't be independent. Kick it around in your fat cat heads for a while, and maybe you'll see what I'm talking about. But if I may quote Barry Goldwater, remember, please, that a government big enough to give you everything you want is also big enough to take away everything you